Hi, my name is Justin. I've always been fascinated with technology, ever since I was a kid. Growing up in a small town where nothing really exciting happened, the internet was my gateway to the world. Chat rooms, gaming forums, you name it, I was on it. But this isn't a story about casual gaming or making new friends online. This is about something much darker. It all started late one Friday night. I was 21 at the time, home alone in my apartment. As usual, my roommate was out of town for the weekend, and I was up late, browsing random forums and chat rooms just to pass the time. That's when I stumbled across a thread titled, "The Silent Room, Enter If You Dare." It didn't look like much, just a single post from a user named Obsidian Eyes, inviting people to join an anonymous chat room that supposedly had a history. Legend went that once you entered, strange things started happening. I chuckled, dismissing it as just another urban legend, but I was bored and curious enough to give it a shot. Chat room link looked outdated, kind of thing that reminded me of early 2000s internet. Basic design, no flashy element, just a simple black screen with a blank text box and a list of anonymous users already inside. There were 5 users when I joined. The usernames were basic, something like Anon, Anon1, Anon2, and so on. I typed hello into the chat box, waiting for someone to respond. For a long time, there was nothing. I was about to close the window when Anon4 finally responded. "You shouldn't be here." I chuckled. "Why not?" Typed back. There's a long pause. Then came a response. "'Cause it's not safe." I waited for more, but Anon4 had gone silent again. A little unnerved, I shrugged it off and tried to engage with the other users, but nobody else typed anything. The silence grew unsettling, especially since everyone was still listed as online. The room felt dead, almost like I was being watched by something unseen. Suddenly, my screen flickered just for a second. It was so fast, I almost thought I imagined it. Then Anon2 sent a message, "Get out while you can." That was it. No cryptic warnings, no conversation, and a flickering screen. Something about it didn't feel right. Couldn't explain it, but it was as if the chat room itself was watching me. Still, I stayed logged in, more out of curiosity than fear. After all, it was probably just a weird server glitch or someone trying to mess with me. But then, strange things started happening to my computer. The browser froze for a moment, and my cursor wouldn't move. I tried to close the window. Chat room wouldn't let me exit. My heart rate picked up as I clicked around frantically. That's when the private messages started flooding in. "You need to leave. They know you're here. They're coming for you." One after another, the messages came through, each more frantic than the last. My screen flickered again, but this time, it didn't stop. A high-pitched noise rang through my headphones, causing me to rip them off my head. The messages stopped, but I realized my reflection in the dark screen wasn't quite right. My face was there, but there was a shadowy figure standing behind me. I spun around in my chair, heart pounding. The room was empty. My mind raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was seriously wrong. I tried to shut down my computer, but it wouldn't respond. The chat room was frozen on my screen, and the flickering had gotten worse. Felt like the screen was trying to show me something. Images, distorted faces, but I couldn't make out what they were. I unplugged my laptop, hoping that would do the trick. The screen stayed on, the flickering intensifying. Suddenly, a new user appeared in the chat room. Watcher1. Unlike the others, their username was bold, standing out from the rest. My pulse quickened as I watched their message pop up. "You've seen too much, Justin." I froze. There was no way anyone in that room could know my name. I hadn't shared any personal information. My mind reeled, trying to rationalize it. Maybe it was just a coincidence, a lucky guess. But the next message wiped away any hope of that. "Don't turn around." Panic surged through me, but I couldn't stop myself. I turned around, my breath catching in my throat. My apartment was still empty, but something felt wrong. I could feel eyes on me, an oppressive presence that seemed to fill the room. I slowly turned back to my laptop, heart hammering in my chest. The chat room had gone completely dark, except for one message in bold red letters from Watcher1. "It's too late now." That night, after I finally forced the laptop off and unplugged it, I tried to sleep, but it felt like I was being watched the entire time. Every creak in the apartment, Every shadow outside my window seemed sinister. Max, my dog, was unusually restless too, growling at nothing. The next day, I chalked it up to a vivid nightmare or a prank. But then things started happening. Random power outages, strange knocks on my door late at night with no one there when I check. Max's behavior worsened. He'd bark at the corner of my room as if something unseen was standing there. The real horror came when I tried to reach out for help. I called my tech-savvy friend to check out my laptop. When he powered it on, everything seemed normal, except for one thing. The silent room was still there, but the usernames were gone. Just one remained. Watcher 1. My friend turned to me, pale, and said, "Dude, I can't explain this, but this chat room shouldn't exist." The last time I logged into my laptop, it wasn't by choice. The screen powered itself on, displaying the chat room again. I had stopped going online after the first incident, but somehow I was back in the silent room. There were no users this time, only a single message that blinked repeatedly. "Justin, it's time to come back." I stared at the screen, paralyzed with fear, unsure of what to do. Then, just like that, my screen went black. For a moment, I thought it was over. Maybe whatever haunted me had moved on. But the heavy footsteps outside my bedroom door proved me wrong. I haven't logged on since. Hi, I'm Mike. Like most people my age, I spend a lot of time online. I'm not a huge fan of social media, but there's something about chat rooms that I love. The anonymity, the randomness, and the weirdness of it all. Sometimes you meet people you wouldn't encounter anywhere else. And, occasionally, you stumble upon something you wish you hadn't. This story happened about 6 months ago. It was a cold Saturday night, and I had nothing going on. Bored, I browsed through old forums, looking for a late-night chat room to kill some time. That's when I found it. Post, buried deep in an old forum, simply titled, "Enter the Ghost Room." The message was short, but it had hundreds of replies. People were talking about strange encounters and eerie conversations that happened in this so-called ghost room. It seemed like a joke, like one of those old internet urban legends. Still, I was curious. The link to the chat room was at the bottom of the post, and before I knew it, click. Page that loaded was simple. Plain black background, a text box at the bottom, and a list of users on the side. There were 7 others in the room, all with generic usernames like Guest 1, Guest 2, and so on. The room itself was eerily quiet, with no one typing. I decided to break the silence. "Hey, is anyone here?" I typed. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then one of the users, Guest 4, responded, "You shouldn't be here, Mike." I froze. There was no way they could have known my name. I hadn't used it in the chat room, and the forum I came from didn't display it either. My fingers hesitated above the keyboard. Maybe it was a lucky guess. Maybe they were just messing with me. But something didn't feel right. I tried to shrug it off, typing back, "Funny. How'd you guess?" Guest 4 responded almost instantly, "I didn't guess. I've been watching you." A chill ran down my spine. I stared at the screen, considering closing the window. But before I could, another message popped up, this time from Guest 7. "Leave while you can." My gut told me to listen, but my curiosity got the better of me. "Why should I leave?" I typed. There was no response. The room stayed dead silent for several minutes. I watched the users list, expecting someone to type something, but nothing happened. Just the eerie quiet, faint sound of my computer fan whirring in the background. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Guest 4 broke the silence. "'Cause you don't belong with us." That was it. I tried to close the window, but it wouldn't let me. The screen flickered for a moment, and then a new message appeared. "Stay, and you'll see why." My heart pounded as I leaned back in my chair. I didn't know what was going on, but something felt wrong. I moved to shut down my laptop, but the moment my finger hovered over the power button, the screen flashed again, this time showing a distorted image. Something like a face, too blurry to make out. I unplugged my laptop, hoping that would turn it off. The screen stayed on, now displaying a single username in bold. The Watcher. The room had emptied, all the other guests disappearing except for this one. "Now you see me." Type. I was done. This was way beyond what I signed up for. I forced the laptop shut, finally breaking the connection. My heart was racing, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed me out of the chat room. That night, I lay awake, feeling as if I was being watched. Every creak, every shadow seemed more sinister than usual. My apartment, which had always felt like a safe space, now felt foreign, cold, and unsettling. Over the next few days, things only got weirder. My phone would glitch out, showing the same message I'd seen in the chat room. You don't belong with us. I started hearing soft whispers at night. Too faint to understand, but always there, like a constant hum, just outside my perception. I wanted to ignore it, to move on, but the messages kept coming. Every time I opened my laptop, no matter where I was, the same chat room would pop up, and the same single message would appear: stay, and you'll see why. It wasn't long before the disturbances left my devices and began affecting my life directly. One night, while I was sitting in my living room, the lights flickered and I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, but I walked over cautiously and peered through the peephole. No one was there. When I opened the door to check the hallway, I found a small, crumpled piece of paper on the floor. Written in scrawled handwriting were the words, "Stop looking for us, Mike." I couldn't breathe. I had never told anyone about the chat room. There was no way anyone in the real world should have known what was happening online. I called a friend and asked him to come over, but even with someone else in the apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. My friend Dan tried to reassure me, saying it was probably some elaborate prank. But when I showed him the messages and the way my devices kept opening the chat room on their own, his expression changed. Couldn't explain it either. The breaking point came when I got an email late one night. It was from an unknown sender. The subject line caught my attention. "Mike, it's not over." The email contained a single attachment, a photo of me, taken from behind, while I was sitting at my desk earlier that day. Camera angle was from inside the room. I hadn't heard anything, hadn't seen anyone, but someone had been in my apartment. I bolted upright from my chair, checked every door and window, but nothing was out of place. That was when I realized that I wasn't safe, no matter what I did. The chat room was still open on my laptop, the screen flickering again. The same message, taunting me. "Stay, and you'll see why." In a fit of desperation, I packed my things and left town, staying at a friend's place for a few days. But the messages followed me. Every night, I would hear whispers, knocks, and see faint figures out of the corner of my eye. I never went back to the chat room after that. But sometimes, when I'm online late at night, I swear I still feel it watching me. Hey, my name is Jake, and I'm a pretty average guy when it comes to the internet. I spend time online, like everyone else, but I'm not obsessed with social media or anything. My thing is computers. I've always been into them, building them, messing around with code, and exploring the hidden corners of the web. But that curiosity led me to something I wish I'd never found. This story starts last year when I was browsing a forum for software enthusiasts. Someone posted a link to what they called a lost chat room. It caught my eye because the link was cryptic, buried in a bunch of nonsense code. The title of the post was simple: "Enter at your own risk." Now, I've been around long enough to know that most of these things are hoaxes, just meant to scare or intrigue people. But something about this one felt different. The replies were strange. People were saying things like, "Don't go back," and "I can't sleep anymore." That's what got me. It wasn't the usual internet trolling. It felt real. So naturally, I clicked. The chatroom interface was old school, like something out of the early 2000s. Basic black background, white text. But what stood out was the name at the top of the screen. The Forgotten File. I had never heard of it before. There were only a handful of people in the room, all with usernames like Anon1, Anon2, and so on. Just like the forum had promised, there were no timestamps, no notifications, no sign of how long the room had been active. It was just there, silent. I typed, "Hello." No one responded at first, and I figured I had wasted my time. But then, about a minute later, a single message appeared from Anon4. "Why did you come here, Jake?" The blood drained from my face. I hadn't entered my name anywhere. There was no way they should have known it. My heart pounded as I stared at the screen, wondering if I should just leave. But before I could close the window, another message popped up. "You found us. Now it's your turn." I tried to exit the chat room, but the button wouldn't work. It was like my screen had locked onto this page. Panicking, I forced shut my laptop. The screen went black, and I sat in silence, trying to calm down. The next morning, I told myself it was probably some sort of script or a hacker trick. Maybe they had just guessed my name. But when I turned my laptop back on, the same chat room was still there. The same list of users, the same silent tension. I hadn't left. This time, instead of panicking, I decided to explore. I scrolled through the messages that had been sent before I joined. Most of them were cryptic, strange phrases like, "he's watching," or "they come at night." One message, though, stood out. It was from N2, and it said, "Find the file. It's hidden in plain sight." I didn't understand what it meant, but I started to feel like this wasn't just a chat room. It was something more, some kind of game, or worse, trap. I started digging into the page's source code, trying to figure out if there was a hidden file or link somewhere, and that's when I found it. Buried deep in the code was a string of text that looked like a file name, forgottenfile.exe. My gut told me not to click it, but my curiosity overpowered my fear. I downloaded the file. At first, nothing happened. I opened the file, and it seemed like a blank program. Just a black window, no text, no buttons. I felt stupid for even bothering with it. But that night, something strange happened. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of my laptop turning on by itself. I looked over at it from my bed, and the screen had the same chat room open. Except this time, the users had changed. Instead of random usernames, it just displayed one word, "you." A single message appeared. "Too late, Jake." My heart raced, and I quickly unplugged the laptop, slamming the lid shut. But it didn't stop. I could hear the faint hum of the machine still running. That's when I noticed it, a reflection on the laptop screen. There was someone standing behind me. I spun around, but there was no one there. The room was empty, silent. The air felt thick. I wasn't alone. I tried to tell myself it was my imagination. Every hair on my neck was standing up. For the next few days, strange things kept happening. Lights flickering, electronics acting up, and worst of all, my laptop would randomly open to that chat room on its own. No matter what I did, it wouldn't stop. I couldn't take it anymore. I went back to the chat room, hoping that anyone, would explain what was going on. When I opened it this time, there was only one message. "We are forgotten. And now, so are you." Before I could type a response, my screen flashed and everything froze. The room went dead silent, my apartment too. I don't know how to explain it, but it felt like the whole world had stopped for a moment. Then, slowly, the chat room came back to life. But the list of users had changed. At the top, it said Jake. My name was now on the list. Panicked, I tried to close the window, but it wouldn't let me. The screen flickered, and suddenly, the chat room started filling with messages, all of them saying the same thing: "Stay with us." I slammed my laptop shut, but I could still hear the faint clicking of keys as if someone was typing from inside the device. I disconnected my laptop from the internet, thinking that might stop it. But the messages kept coming, even without a connection. And the worst part was the whispers, soft, almost inaudible, but constant, as if the people in the chat room were now all around me, trying to drag me in. After days of this, I had enough. I went to a tech specialist, hoping they could remove whatever virus or program had infected my laptop. The guy behind the counter gave me a strange look when I described what was happening, but he took the computer to examine it. When I came back to the shop the next day, the guy looked pale. He told me he couldn't find any trace of a file, chat room, or even the internet activity I described. It was like nothing I said had ever existed on the laptop. The only thing he found was a single note, saved in my documents folder. It simply read, "You're one of us now." I smashed the laptop that day, but the fear didn't go away. Every now and then, I still hear the faint sound of keys typing in the dead of night. And sometimes, just sometimes, I catch a glimpse of a reflection on my phone screen. Someone standing behind me. The worst part? I'm starting to forget things. Little details about my life, places I've been, people I know. It's as if the more time passes, the more I'm slipping away. I think that's what happened to the others in the chat room. They weren't users. They were people who got trapped. And now, I'm one of them.